All right, after much delay, we got the mystery box full of parts. It took a long time for this to show up from California. A bit of a delay in shipping, but we've got the box, and it should have the correct bearings, and it should also have a missing block seal kit. So let's see what we got here. Okay, we got a set of 25, these will be rod bearings, and these will be our main bearings. And yes, they are 1/4 millimeter undersized. And then the last thing that we got is what's called a block kit. And it's got the water pump, lots of O-rings. It's got a whole bunch of parts. I don't even know where, there's some for around the timing cover. To be honest, I didn't know this kit existed. But that's great to have all those parts. Definitely come in handy. But the big one is these the rubber blocks for the, I'll show you which ones they are for the main bearing. I'll just open this up here. These are the key ones that I needed. It comes with this here, which are 2 little rubber seals that go on the main bearing end cap. I'll show you. On the main bearing end cap, there's a little groove on either end, and these just fit inside there and act as a seal. So they'll get siliconed in. I'm not sure what happened here, but some reason I screwed up. I think I lost a video. In a nutshell, what I'm doing is I'm installing the new bearings on the connecting rod and with the plastic gauge, and I'm installing them on the crankshaft so that I can measure how much clearance there is between the connecting rod and the crankshaft. Moving into the time lapse, I'm assembling all the connecting rods onto the crankshaft. Very important when you're doing this that you have the little arrow on the piston orientated correctly so that it's pointing towards the number 1 piston or towards the pulley. And that the connecting rod caps are orientated correctly on the rod. Otherwise you could have a binding issue. Just really important that everything goes back exactly the way that it was originally done. Okay, all those, I got all the plastic gauge squished in there, so looking at this, if you look at those little lines, the one on the left is 3/1000 of an inch, the little white rectangular. Next one is 2. Next one is 1.5 thousandths, and the last one is 1/1000th. And you can see how the 1/1000th is squished, is a very fat one. In other words, that plastic gauge has been squished flat. So it makes it less clearance. Obviously, it's going to get squished more. So you can see on this one here, there's a bit of a remnant where you can see that was. So let's see if I can do this so we can compare. And it looks like it's right about the 2/2000ths of an inch, which is basically spot on where we want to be. If we look down at the next one, where are we here? Right there, there's another one. We put our plastic gauge in here. Next to that, again, we're right about 2/1000ths of an inch. So the other ones, I don't know where they went. I gotta just go through them. I'll check them, but I'm sure they're all gonna be about the same. I'll double check, but that's right where we wanna be. 2/1000ths of an inch is great. Okay, so I've checked those other connecting rod, the other 2, and they're all perfect. Everything is right on 2/1000ths of an inch. The machine shop did a great job in getting that ground accurately. So the next one we're going to be doing is setting up our main bearings. We'll pop the bearings in those, and then we put, these are a little easier to do, and then we'll check the clearance of our mains on the crank to the bearings. Okay, quickly put the bearings in there. Now what we're going to do is lay the crank in. I'm not going to put the thrust bearings in because This is just temporary. I don't want to put those in till final assembly. So just wipe the crank down here, make sure the journals are nice and clean. And then we're gonna lay this into there. Now remember, in this case, this is number 1, and this is the rear end here where the flywheel goes onto. So you wanna make sure that your crankshaft is orientated correctly so that the front of the crank is pointed towards the front of the engine. So we're just gonna lay this down in there, just like that. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna get the same thing. We're gonna get our plastic gauge. I think what I'll do is I'll put a little dab of assembly lube on each one here, so that plastic gauge actually stuck pretty darn good to the crank. So this will maybe help so it doesn't stick quite so hard. I don't want to get in any of those oil holes either, so I'll turn the crank a bit. But I'm going to take the plastic gauge, break a little piece off, and just lay it so it's in line with the crank. Hopefully you guys can see that. Just know that it is there. One more. There we go. Now what I'll do is I'm going to fit the bearings into the caps and bolt the caps into place. Okay, got these all bolted down. Again, not torqued, just good and tight. And one thing to note on here, you'll notice on all the caps there's the number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Number 5 is obvious because it's the last one here. And you'll also notice there's arrows pointing forward. Again, that is pointing towards the front of the front of the engine and towards number 1. It's really important that you orientate these correctly and they're in the correct order. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen these off, take the caps off, and we should have the plastic gauge on each of the journals, and we'll measure our clearance between each one. Okay, I didn't show that last bearing coming out here. It can be a bit of a bugger. It actually came out faster than I anticipated. I stopped recording, but anyway, they're out. Now what we need to do is check our sizes with our plastic gauge here, which I have to get a new one because I seem to have misplaced the other one, but we'll tear this off. And hopefully you guys will be able to see this okay. You can see the plastic gauge there on all the journals. And we're just going to start with this one. It's easy to get to. And it's looking like that's 2/1000 of an inch. I'd call that 2. That one is probably closer to 3, to be honest. That one is closer to 3. And that one will be 2. So we got 2/1000 there, and it looks up closer to 3/1000 there. 3/1000 a little on the high side. It's still within tolerance, so we're good. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to take this out. I'm going to clean this, clean the crank up, get all the plastic gauge off, and then drop the crank in, and then we'll fit our thrust bearings. Okay, I got the crank cleaned up, put back in, and now we're going to put the thrust bearings in. So what you get with the thrust bearings, they're a pair. They look like this. They're flat on one side, and there's a groove on the other side. The flat part goes against the block. The one with the groove, that is like an oil groove for the oil to allow to get in there. So it's very important that that side goes against your crankshaft. And the tab, that part goes into, this is your number 3 main bearing cap, and that part slides in there like that. Now I did one of these engines before, and I didn't quite have it in correctly, and it was a bit like that. and I messed up the bearing. I ended up having to order a new one from Japan. Set me back like 2 weeks. It was very frustrating. So really be careful when you put these in. They can be a little bit tricky to put in. And if you can see, I don't know if you can see, basically there's a small groove. I'm gonna take this out actually to see if I can show you. The inside of the crankshaft in number 3, right where my thumb is, that is that's a ground, like a very nice surface, both sides. So that is where the thrust bearing is running against. So there's a groove down in here where that'll slide in. So I'm gonna put some assembly lube on here, and these will just roll in very nicely. Now's the time to be somewhat liberal. So what I do is I just lay it on the top like this, and then I kind of just spin it, and it should just roll in there if I've got enough clearance. Call me a liar. Oh, the crank's not centered, that's why. There we go. So that will just roll inside and fall all the way through. All right, let's pop the crank out. Had too much of a gap there, so we'll just pick that up. Put that back in there. Try and center it a bit better so that it can't fall out. Try that again. It should just sit on there and roll in. There we go. And you know you've got it. You can see the other side pop up. There's one end of it there, one end of it here, so that's good. And now what you can do is kind of push the crankshaft that way, and there'll be just enough room to get the next one in. Again, making sure the side with the grooves is facing the crank. Oh, you know what? Let me just check. I gotta double check, make sure I put that in correctly. I have a funny feeling I did it wrong. Oh man, I'm lucky. Very lucky. Let's put that correctly. I don't know if that was caught on camera, if you could see that, but I'm gonna see if I can get this in with that bearing in place. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, good thing I caught that. It might not have been detrimental because, I don't know, wouldn't have been good though. So again, making sure this is against the crank side. Get it right this time. There we go. Roll that in. And now we're ready for the bearing cap. Lube on there. This is the side, and you want to put a little bit on the back side. It'll help it stick. It's really important that that doesn't come loose. There's a fair bit of clearance on there, so it's not really held in very positively. It can slide out, so you just when you're putting it together, be really sure that that part doesn't go and slide out on you. So there we go. We got our grooves facing the crankshaft on both sides. And we have to make sure our arrow is pointing forward, and we'll slide this in. Like so. Get a couple of bolts. You can see that those top thrust bearings are in the correct spot. You can see the tops of them, and they are in that groove, so that's good. So I'm just gonna get this started, and then what I want to do is actually take a mallet because this cap could be pushed to one side or pushed to the other side of the slot there. So I want to make sure that it is set all the way one way. So I'm just going to give this a couple of cracks and then tighten these up. That was with a plastic mallet. Snug those, because what you want to have, you need to have, is a little bit of end play. I don't seem to have any end play. Oh yeah, there is. I can feel it. It's very minimal. So what we'll do is once we get this all together, we'll put a dial indicator on the face here, and we'll measure to see how much end play we have. We want to have, I think it's about 1 to 2,000ths of an inch. I'll have to check. But I'm going to go ahead and pop all these caps on and then go from there. Okay, so we're going to torque these things up. I'm leaving the last one off for now because I've got to put some silicone on those rubber blocks in the last one. So I'm just going to tighten up the first 4 main bearings. Looking in the book here, it's 4 kilogram, what is it, Newton meters? Kilogram meters. 4 kilogram meters plus or minus 0.3 of a kilogram, which if you put that right in the middle of the tolerance is 29 foot-pounds. Oh, look at that. Spins beautifully. So nice. It's so nice having new parts, putting them all together and having it all just fit perfect. Okay, so last one I'm going to do is this this end bearing here, but I've got to get some silicone, so we'll get on that. Well, unfortunately, I don't have any silicone. The last stuff I had was starting to just go too solid and I chucked it out. So I'm going to have to actually stop here. I'm going to have to get some silicone tomorrow and carry on with this. And then we can start installing the piston rings and get this pistons installed. One thing I'll show you real quick before I sign off here. The spare head, I got that machine, so it is ready to rebuild. As you guys, if you remember, the original head off this engine, I'm not touching. I rebuilt it not that long ago, but I do have a spare head, so I'll be able to show you guys what's involved in doing that. So that's it for now. Hopefully we can carry on tomorrow. I am actually going to head out of town here on Friday for 2 weeks, so I really want to try and get this a lot of progress done on this before I go away, because it's been long enough with no videos. So I'll definitely do what I can. I can't tell you where I'm going right now, but when I get back, I'll be able to tell you guys where I'm going. It's very far away. It's going to be interesting, a place I've never been. Anyway, thanks for watching the video, guys. If you have any comments, questions, any feedback, please let me know in the comments. I will respond. And yeah, if you like these videos, give me a like, give me a thumbs up, and even better, subscribe. Thanks a lot.